restricting U.S. military aid to Israel. In the age of normalization. With the rise in global solidarity with Palestinians, since the May 2021 Unity Intifada, United States policymakers and activists are calling for conditioning and halting U.S. military aid to Israel. Al-Shabaka's U.S. policy fellow, Nadia Tanis, examines this shifting tide and offers recommendations for how policymakers, lobbyists, and the international community can seize on this historic moment in the defense of Palestinian rights. The United States' long-standing commitment to militarily aiding Israel is layered with new considerations, in light of recent developments in Palestine, the U.S. and beyond. The Unity Intifada, which erupted following the Israeli regime's ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah, its attack on worshippers in the Aqsa mosque complex, and its vicious assault on Gaza in May 2021, garnered Palestinians unprecedented support from activists and policymakers across the world, and even in the halls of Capitol Hill. This dramatic shift in global public and political opinion is critical for the Palestinian struggle, and it presents an opportunity to push for policies that hold Israel accountable for its crimes against the Palestinian people. This policy brief contextualizes U.S. military aid to Israel historically, delineating how central such aid has become in regional dynamics between Israel and Arab states, and between Arab states and Palestine. It examines the ways in which the recent convergence of global grassroots movements and their vocal solidarity with Palestine are challenging the U.S. business as usual. From the streets to the halls of power, a concerted push to condition, sanction, and halt U.S. military aid to Israel is gaining traction globally. The brief offers preliminary recommendations for activists, lobbyists and policymakers for how to make use of this transformational moment in the history of Palestinian solidarity. Harnessing the movement effectively would contribute to substantively pressuring the U.S., Israel and their allies, to end their ongoing oppression of Palestinians across historic Palestine. Since Israel's establishment in 1948, the U.S. has largely shaped its relationship to the Middle East through maintaining security and leverage for Israel and its supporters. On the one hand, it has done this by maintaining Israel's regional military dominance through continued funding. On the other, it has brokered peace deals between Arab states and Israel, deals that require Arab governments to support Israel politically and economically, or, in the least, to abstain from publicly condemning its actions. Throughout 2020, former U.S. President Donald Trump ushered in a new era of U.S.-brokered normalization treaties between Israel and Arab states, specifically the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. The agreements came at the same time as Palestinians were witnessing one of the most aggressive advances of the Israeli regime. In this way, the agreements directly undercut Palestinian demands for self-determination, and normalized the Israeli regime's ongoing violence against Palestinians. The Biden administration has not differed from Trump's with regards to fulfilling the U.S. unconditional support for Israel, which is in alignment with the Obama administration's 10-year Memorandum of Understanding. The Biden administration has been committed to supporting Israel's ongoing colonial expansion. This became clear when Washington failed to condemn Israel's blatant ethnic cleansing in Jerusalem and war crimes against Palestinians in Gaza in May 2021. Beyond Capitol Hill, grassroots movements of Palestinians and tens of thousands of Palestine supporters have taken to the streets across major U.S. cities, protesting the Israeli regime's disproportionate use of power, poking holes in the stale peace discourses that distract from Israeli colonial violence, and calling for freedom for the Palestinian people. These efforts were inspired by the unprecedented mobilization witnessed across historic Palestine and the world, and which unified Palestinians to push back against ethnic cleansing, settler colonial violence, apartheid, and siege, effectively defying their geographic and political fragmentation. The tide is clearly shifting in the U.S. In May 2021, the Los Angeles Times cited an April 2021 Gallup study which reported a massive surge in support for Palestine over the past decade, from 1 in 7 U.S. citizens primarily sympathizing with Palestine to now 1 in 4.